District of Conservation is sponsored by the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, better known as CFACT. To learn more about our sponsor, head over to cfact.org. Thanks for listening to the program. Welcome to District of Conservation. I'm your host, Gabriella Hoffman. This podcast offers a sober examination into all things hunting, fishing, shooting sports, energy, environment, and the public policy surrounding it. And this podcast also specializes in original interviews that you won't hear elsewhere. Here's what I have for you today. For listeners in the Garden State, you need to be aware of a very bad piece of legislation, Assembly Bill 6055. And someone who drew awareness to this recently is Assemblyman Mike Inganamort, who is a brother to one of my very good friends here in the Washington, D.C. area. And Mike, Assemblyman Inganamort, it's so wonderful to have you here. I saw your tweet on this, and it goes into the wider problem of these rewilding efforts, and we'll go into this. But before we talk about the concerns about this bill, and I got a lot of engagement on social media. I had hundreds of likes, lots of comments from concerned New Jerseyans about this, And I would like you to walk everyone through this once I ask you, but talk about your background. You're involved in some of the sportsmen's groups in New Jersey. Give a little bit of some context as to your involvement and why you're concerned here.
Glad to do it. Thank you so much, Gabriella, for having me on. I'm really glad we're having this conversation because this bill is really critically important to anyone who cares about hunting, fishing, trapping, you name it. And as you said, we'll get to that. But thanks for having me on. I'm Mike Inganamort. I am serving in the New Jersey State Legislature. I represent the 24th Legislative District, which is actually a bit of a suburban rural district. New Jersey is the most densely populated state, and yet we do have beautiful swaths of open space, preserved farmland. We've been very intentional about preserving open space and access to hunting and fishing in the state of New Jersey over the past many decades. I serve on the Environment Committee here in Trenton, where we are today. We're gearing up for our first of 3 voting sessions in the lame duck period. And on the Environment Committee, my gosh, I wish I was spending my time promoting, proactive management of our forests and conservation issues. But in fact, I end up spending more of my time fighting silly consumer product bans and top-down mandates and limits to the types of energy that New Jerseyans may use. Nevertheless, we keep fighting here. I also serve as the co-chair of New Jersey's Angling and Hunting Conservation Caucus. We are a small but mighty caucus that cares a whole heck of a lot about, as I just said, angling and hunting conservation here in the state of New Jersey. There's a lot of it going on. In fact, we are talking here Monday, December 8th. It's opening day for white-tailed deer, as well as the second phase of our 2-phase black bear hunt. So this conversation couldn't come at a better time.
It absolutely couldn't. And New Jersey is so beautiful. I think I've come to appreciate it a little more in some of my travels. And I want to ask you later, I think you have similar thoughts to me about offshore wind, because I know that's a big lightning rod issue. It does a lot to kind of invade on the ecological and conservation landscape. And I know that's a very big issue in New Jersey. You guys are probably relieved about that. Yes. But New Jersey is a sportsman's paradise in many ways. And I think people don't think of it like that. But even in a state as densely populated as the Garden State, you guys have a healthy black bear population. And I know you got the season back. But I love the fact that you touched upon the Sportsman's Caucus involvement, hunting and angling. And if it's not hunting, it's always angling. That's also going to be attacked. So both have to be, in synergy with each other. I'm in full belief of that. But let's dive deep into this piece of legislation that you first put out there and got onto my radar. What is it and why is it concerning? I think people on social media have seen a little bit about what it is. To me, it seems like this greater rewilding effort we see across blue states, not surprisingly. I think Virginia is going to be encountering this with the new change of governor and a supermajority, kind of against sportsmen's interests. But talk about this bill, Assemblyman Inganamort, and why are you concerned about it?
Absolutely. And in fact, if you don't mind, Gabriella, I just want to respond to one of the things you just said. You mentioned that we have a healthy black bear population here in New Jersey. And I'm sure what you meant by that is that we have a large black bear population, which we most certainly do. Large and healthy, again, I'm telling you something you know, and I bet your listeners know, large and healthy are not the same thing. I would argue that our black bear population is actually unhealthy by way of its size and the rapid growth. I mean, we're talking about a doubling of the black bear population in this small state of New Jersey in just a number of years. We're at around 3,000 black bears in New Jersey. Most estimates put it at 4,000 in the next year or two. It was just 1,500 a couple of years back. So there is a real imbalance going on here, to say nothing of other wild populations, including white-tailed deer. We're seeing more coyotes. We're seeing a real resurgence of bobcats, believe it or not. So you mentioned a sportsman's paradise. You're absolutely right about that. And that requires proactive engagement of these species, of these wild areas, and frankly, we're not doing enough of it. Now, you asked the critical question, which is, what is this bill, Assembly Bill 6055? Here's what it would do. It would take New Jersey's Fish and Game Council, which is 11 strong, 11 members of this Fish and Game Council. They have rulemaking authority as to the management of wildlife populations in the state of New Jersey. 3 of the members are farmers, 6 of the members are sportsmen. 1 is the chair of New Jersey's Endangered and Non-Game Species Advisory Committee, and the final member is any individual knowledgeable in land use management and soil conservation. It's a nice balance as far as I'm concerned, 11 strong, and typically what this council has recommended, in addition to the lower level rulemaking, they have proposed a comprehensive black bear management policy, which includes as part of it a controlled, regulated, legal bear hunt. Well, the animal welfare activists in New Jersey have been fighting this for decades, and it's really become a hot potato. And what happened most recently is that there was a legal challenge to the authority of the Fish and Game Council to regulate and manage these wildlife populations. And the challenge made the argument that there should not be 6 sportsmen on this council, because the litigants in this matter, animal welfare activists, felt that the New Jersey State Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs, which was recommending these individuals, who are ultimately appointed or not by the governor and approved by the Senate, all of which is Democratic controlled, by the way, the litigants argued that the sportsmen's clubs should not be making these recommendations. Well, the appellate division tossed the argument. They said, no, you're wrong. They can make these recommendations. They have for decades, and state statute is clear on that. So what did the activists do? They didn't take their ball home. They took their ball to the state legislature, where they found common cause with some very liberal, very progressive Democratic legislators who are diametrically opposed to the concept of a black bear hunt. I'm not so sure where these folks fall on hunting in general. I think they're basically opposed to all shapes and forms of hunting. And nevertheless, this bill would take 3 sportsmen off the Fish and Game Council and replace them with 3 individuals recommended by animal welfare nonprofit organizations. Well, what does that mean, Gabriella? Take a wild guess. These are the organizations that are actively opposing the bear hunt today. So what you would do is reconstitute the Fish and Game Council and quite possibly get them to a place, if not with this first pass of legislation, but maybe more legislation down the road, where that Fish and Game Council would no longer be recommending a black bear hunt in New Jersey.
That would be the first thing they do. And I suspect they would then go after predator contests or some sort of predator management, which is, people don't know, fairly legal almost year round in most states, even states you don't suspect. Who are the groups that are pushing this? Do you have intel? Do you know, are they open about who it is? Because there is a group called Wildlife for All that is pushing this effort to reimagine wildlife agencies across the states. Is a group like that involved? Is this more PETA? Is this Humane Society? Who do you know is pushing this?
Yeah, all of the above. None of these organizations are specifically named in the legislation. I'm sure that's by design. Another one that comes to mind is the Animal Protection League of New Jersey, which is one of the most outspoken opponents of a bear hunt in the state of New Jersey. If you drive around New Jersey, you might see their billboards or their bumper stickers where the tagline is, "She's his mother, not a trophy." It's referencing a female black bear who, in their opinion, should not be involved in any type of hunting. Well, in fact, New Jersey's bear hunt already prohibits that. If you come upon a bear with cubs, you may not harvest that bear. So they're arguing a moot point. Nevertheless, these are the types of organizations, Gabriella, that are just diametrically opposed to hunting, bears or otherwise. And frankly, they have no business being on the Fish and Game Council, which makes its decisions based on sound science, sound conservation. There is, in my opinion, nothing more ethical or humane than a controlled, well-regulated hunt to properly and proactively manage species populations.
That's exactly correct, Mike. And I think that what a lot of these animal welfare activists don't understand is if there's no active management, there's going to be some other imbalance in the ecosystem where we see in Colorado. I'm not sure how closely you pay attention to Colorado and other states that are trying to experiment with this or actually experimenting with this. In Colorado, listeners are very familiar. They reintroduced the wolf by ballot box, and they've had to kill more wolves by euthanization than they would, arguably speaking, through a managed hunt. And they've wasted millions of dollars. There have been cattle that have been killed. People's pets and livestock. I wouldn't be surprised if soon people are going to be attacked by gray wolves in Colorado, just how fast they reproduce. But it's a disaster in states like that. They've tried to ban bear hunts in California, Washington State, thankfully to no avail. Certain battles are in the courts and there are changes there. But to think that something like this would come to New Jersey through this kind of innocuous or innocent looking effort, that's why for me it was an alarm bell to see you post this, not because you are posting this, but the very fact that this has been introduced. And we have warned people on this program for years. And I worry this is coming to Virginia, as I alluded to earlier. I want to ask you, are you nervous about the conservation direction of New Jersey, perhaps under Governor-elect Mikey Sherrill? Does she have kind of an attitude where she would want more of this rewilding, animal welfare constituency represented? Has she indicated that, or she's been very quiet? Are you optimistic, pessimistic about the kind of future direction of Jersey?
Yeah, well, I'm not optimistic, put it that way. But I try not to let myself become pessimistic because I'm a relatively young guy with a young family, and we are committed to staying in New Jersey. And I really don't want to see my state go so far to the left that it becomes unlivable, whether it's because of these conservation policies, taxation, energy, you name it. Governor-elect Sherrill, over the course of this year's gubernatorial campaign, was comically quiet and silent and evasive on a whole wide array of issues. Top among them was taxation, very dodgy on that. And you can imagine it was the same when it came to these conservation issues. She really hasn't weighed in, so I have no reason to be optimistic, particularly given the sorts of folks that she surrounds herself with who tend to be these animal welfare organizations that are diametrically opposed to the bear hunt. Let's call it as it is. The individuals proposing this legislation in New Jersey are Democratic members of the legislature. They share a party, they share a philosophy, they share a view of conservation and hunting with our new governor-elect. So we are going to be fighting this tooth and nail. You know, you mentioned other states, Gabriella. Whether you're a black bear, a wolf, a coyote, you don't care what state you're in. You act according to your animal instinct. And so these confrontations you mentioned in Colorado and California, it's happening in New Jersey as well. As the black bear population has doubled from 1,500 to 3,000 bears, and we're on track for 4,000 bears, the number of human and bear interactions have increased as well. We're talking about men, women, boys, girls, all ages, and up and down our state who are coming across these black bears who are strolling through their backyards, walking down the street, particularly when you're taking out your garbage or recycling to be picked up once a week. So the danger is there. And as the population increases unsustainably, the danger increases.
I've seen some of the stories of black bears attacking people even lethally, which is unheard of. I follow bear conservation very closely. I had the opportunity earlier this year to be a bear cub cuddler with Maryland DNR. And that is quite an experience thanks to hunters and gun owners through Pittman Robertson. So if you ever get a chance, you got to do it. And I feel like they would like assemblymen like you to attend and see what goes on there. But it's a really cool privilege to do that. And cool. What everyone who encounters bears or does bear conservation understands is black bears are the least aggressive, all things considered. Grizzly bears, slightly more aggressive. Polar bears, you're dead, essentially, with the interaction. But New Jersey's bears are particularly very interesting where they have been known to kill people. And you don't really hear, it's very rare for a black bear to lethally kill a person. You don't think of it. It's somewhat unheard of, but it does happen. It's happening actually in Japan, of all places. They have to have a bear management season too in Japan. Right. And so New Jersey bears especially the unmanaged ones, are very notoriously aggressive. So people are familiar with that. Or I think there was a video of a lady welcoming in a black bear from Jersey or Tennessee. I don't remember. Maybe she was from Jersey. I don't remember. She was an animal welfare activist, and I believe she was in Jersey, and she conditioned a bear like with food to come to her house. And very wrong. You don't do that, of course. Nobody encourages that. But not surprisingly, these animal welfare people do that. And I also want to ask you more so about, or just kind of Jersey's attitudes to conservation. And I alluded to this earlier. Well, let's talk a little bit about the fishing side. I investigated offshore wind in your state a couple years ago, and that's a big concern. And it's very good. And I'm encouraged to see the federal government take a look at the different projects. And I have a suspicion, unfortunately, that Governor-elect Sherrill will be double downing on this. But what I'd heard from some of the fishermen I spoke to is that in the areas where they wanted to erect offshore wind turbines, they were creating no-go zones. And they told me those are the best fishing spots in the Atlantic where they were citing some of these projects. Did you ever hear that? And were a lot of anglers that you've spoken to kind of concerned about that as well?
They are absolutely concerned about it, and they have been concerned about it. The anglers, the commercial fishermen, the recreational folks who just enjoy fishing out on our beautiful Jersey shore. There has been a lot of trouble with offshore wind, and that's not exclusive to New Jersey. And as you just said, I'm glad that the Trump administration has effectively pulled the plug. We would like to see this industry go away because, frankly, this source of intermittent power is not reliable. It's tremendously expensive, and we see an impact on the marine ecology and the marine wildlife, and it's not a good one. For a number of summers, we've seen whales and a variety of dolphins wash up on our beautiful Jersey shore. We don't want that to happen. We want to protect that marine ecology, and these offshore wind turbines being drilled down into the earth are causing a tremendous disturbance. So they are harmful on the ecological side of things, and they are not generating the type of power we need here in the state of New Jersey. Just zoom out a little bit, Gabriella, if you will, and consider the state of energy in here in New Jersey.
Please, yes.
8 years ago, New Jersey was an energy exporter. Today, we are an energy importer. Does that sound like the sort of thing you heard about us at the federal level, right? America was producing energy, then we were importing it, and we want to get back in a place where we are producing and ultimately exporting it again. New Jersey, unfortunately, is going in the wrong direction. We are importing energy here in the state of New Jersey. Why? Our demand is up, our supply is down. The supply is down because in the past 8 years, 6 power plants in the state of New Jersey were deliberately closed. One of them was nuclear, by the way. What is more safe, clean, and reliable than nuclear power? In fact, the existing nuclear we have in the state of New Jersey powers approximately 40% of the state. That's incredible. That's incredible. Nuclear power, 40% of the state, no carbon emissions, safe, clean, and reliable. I wish we'd lean into it even more. Nevertheless, we are going in the wrong direction when it comes to energy, closing these power plants. I'm fighting here in Trenton on the Environment Committee and elsewhere to bring more power online to meet the demand. We are seeing some wiggle room from our Democratic colleagues on the issue of nuclear, so we got to really lean in on that. But the bottom line is our supply is not meeting the demand. We need to lean into safe, clean, and reliable power generation.
Absolutely well said. You're speaking my language because I'm a big fan of nuclear, and I think that's one of the few sources that could bridge the divide, very honestly. And it is most reliable, works almost 100% of the time of the year, and it's such a small footprint. I wonder if you've ever made the arguments or presented this in a committee, and you should, kind of the environmental trade-offs to solar and wind projects onshore and offshore, Assemblyman Inganamort. And I think you'll get a lot of your colleagues' eyes lit up with how much land is used. And even if there's this promise of low carbon electricity, everyone knows that wind and solar are the least reliable, most intermittent power. But nobody ever talks about the land use or the end of life cycle of these projects, which to me could become a worse environmental disaster than, and I don't think of this of oil and gas and coal, but it would actually be, in my opinion, the transition to solar and wind 100% would be far worse for the environment to me than conventional coal, natural gas, and oil.
Here, here. I think you're zeroing in on a really important point. I am making that point, but not as well as you just did, Gabriella, because what you've identified is the fact that, well, first of all, New Jersey is one of the smallest states geographically. We are the single most densely populated state. That is to say, we're running out of room here. And issues of development are very hot. They're front and center here in the state of New Jersey. And it's all these things are related, of course. It's no coincidence that as our population increases, our development increases, and our preserved and protected open space and farmland is at risk of shrinking, it's no wonder that our wildlife species become imbalanced. So we really need to be conscious of these things, including as it relates to solar and wind and the amount of space, physical space is what we're talking about, that is taken up, gobbled up here in New Jersey. No one wants to see a farm that's producing agricultural products, using the earth, using the soils in a productive way, be turned over into just a sea of metal technology. Nothing hurts the heart more in our beautiful northwest corner of the state. So we are taking away this beautiful open space that could be used in a more productive way in agriculture, in conservation, in hunting for that matter, for an intermittent energy source that is just not meeting the demand.
It's so true. And I hope more. Sometimes there is debates in the wider hunter conservation space, Assemblyman, where you kind of encounter some lefty ones, and they're all great people and they mean well. But they don't see the forest from the trees here, unfortunately, where they're like, no, we need solar and wind because like oil is so terrible. But they're kind of ambivalent about nuclear. And I'm like, well, if you want a middle ground, nuclear is great, or small SMRs, or different. And what I think people forget is with coal, which is making a comeback after years of overregulation, coal is a lot safer to use today than it was 50 years ago, or natural gas. Natural gas is perhaps the cleanest fuel burning source available today. You don't need to have massive plants to do it. Everything can be innovated, modernized, and synchronized where you're conscious of the land and you're also making sure you have low footprint environmentally and you're servicing the community. Because when these projects come to the community, as you very well know, they're bringing in jobs, they're bringing in economic productivity. And I hate that these two interests, the energy and conservation side of things, are pitted against each other. And that's what we try to showcase here at the show. And I'm glad you also adhere to that philosophy too, where these two interests have just been pitted against one another, and people weigh certain trade-offs versus others. And you can be smart about development and not overdevelop. And I think a lot of legacy environmentalists don't have that in mind.
That's right. That's right. Yep, you're right on the target there, Gabriella. You mentioned small modular reactors and nuclear in general as being just the common sense middle ground. Hey, we may disagree on other types of energy. I'm talking between the Republicans and the Democrats, at least here in the legislature in New Jersey. But there can and should be bipartisan interest and agreement on nuclear. It checks all the boxes. I wish we'd lean into it more.
I think it will start to get more traction. I've seen it in Washington. I am seeing it increasingly in the states. Even my governor-elect was like, yeah, let's do some nuclear. We'll see how much she follows through with that promise, because solar is enticing her. She likes fusion, which leaves me kind of encouraged there, but I'm a little skeptical because she said she doesn't like new natural gas. But Assemblyman Inganamort, if people want to fight this bad piece of legislation, I got a lot of comments on my social media post on Instagram. How do I fight this? How do I get involved? A lot of people from Jersey were asking, even people from outside of Jersey. And I know a call to action would be great. So should they contact your office? Should they reach out to their members respectively in the target their direct officials? Is there some sort of action form? Where would you like to send people to put their complaints or opposition to the piece of legislation?
Thanks for asking, Gabriella. All of the above. Please reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram, Mike Inganamort NJ. You can find me on X at Mike Inganamort or on Facebook at Assemblyman Mike Inganamort. Please reach out to our office. We are collecting these comments. But hey, if you're in New Jersey or you have friends or families in New Jersey, family members, have them reach out to their own legislators as well. All of that information is online, as you can imagine. Contact any and all legislators and encourage them to oppose this silly bill that would do more harm than good. It would do exclusive harm is what it would do. And we need to do everything we can to ensure that it is not heard in the lame duck period or next year.
It's a death by a thousand cuts. And what starts as a effort like this expands to woolly concerning prohibitions writ large. So Assemblyman Inganamort, it's a pleasure to talk to you. You know what you're doing, and I feel confident that you could help lead the charge lead the charge to fight this really ridiculous bill and kind of be a sounding board for other states. I have lawmakers from different states, federal level, who listen to this show. And I hope they are, seeing the alarm bells coming from Jersey and making sure that these efforts don't materialize in their state. So thank you so much, Assemblyman. Come back anytime with updates, and we look forward to hopefully seeing this defeated.
Hear, hear. I really appreciate it, Gabriella. We are singing from the same song sheet, aren't we? So let's keep doing it. Let's keep collaborating, working together. We're going to keep up the fight here in New Jersey and appreciate everything you're doing in the other 49 states.
If you enjoyed this installment of District of Conservation, I would love to know your feedback. Send it my way. Please be sure to leave us reviews on Apple, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are played, and also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to never miss a beat nor a guest announcement. Thanks so much for listening to District of Conservation. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please share the podcast to those who may be interested in learning more about these critical natural resources, environment, energy issues.